Okay, Mike, are we good to get going?
We are live. Go ahead.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to call to order our Mayor's Council public meeting. Before we get started, I do want to introduce and welcome the newest member to the Mayor's Council. We have Deputy Mayor Lisa Wilder from the Village of Belcarra. So welcome, and we look forward to working with you on the Mayor's Council.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Okay, so Mike, if we can confirm the live stream looks like it is working.
It is.
Okay, and Carol, as our recording secretary, are you able to confirm the attendance at today's meeting?
I am able to.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we're going to start with the first item on the agenda, which is the adoption of our agenda. So I will look for the body if they'd like to move the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're going to move on to the approval of our minutes from the October 1st meeting. So I will look to the body to move the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and I'm not seeing any discussion or comments, so I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, moving on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is public delegates. My understanding is we don't have any registered public delegates to speak to the Mayor's Council this morning. But if folks do recall, last month there were some questions raised in delegates about why printed schedules hadn't been distributed in September, and I understand that staff from TransLink would like just to provide some further information to the Mayor's Council about that.
Yeah, Mayor, it's Steve Anigat here, Customer Communications of TransLink. I'd like to report back to you on that topic, if that's okay. So prior to each seasonal change, and so that's 4 times a year, we would typically print 75,000 timetables, printed schedules, each time that we distribute to 155 locations around the region, community centers, libraries, campuses. As you can imagine, through COVID, most of these locations are not accepting deliveries, are not accepting hard touch of anything, any printed schedules of any sort. So we suspended the printing of timetables and schedules for the fall and winter seasons. And we're now looking at how we deal with this going forward in the future. Some of the things we're considering, some of the factors we need to consider is that this costs us about $200,000 each year to print all of these timetables. All of this information, all of these timetables are available online on our website, so it's easy to print it off yourself. And also the other consideration we have is that because we have to print the timetables well in advance of when they actually go into effect, they often don't reflect some last minute changes that have to be made. So there are some inaccuracies in there which do frustrate our customers. That said, if there's a large number of our customers who really, really want printed timetables and printed schedules, we need to find a way to accommodate that. And that's what we want to look for going forward. So what we're proposing to do going forward is gather some public feedback on this, talk to our user groups, and in the meantime, any customers that want to have a printed schedule can contact our customer call center, and we'll print it off and mail it to them. So I would encourage any of our customers who really need that printed schedule to call 604-953-3333 or contact us through our live chat or our online feedback form, and we'll mail them a copy. Back to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you for the update. Mayor Hurley.
Yes, thank you for that, and thank you to staff for the update on that. This is an important issue for many seniors out there who don't rely on internet, believe it or not. And I think it's important that we do get on this quickly and ensure that the people who use our system and who need our system have the proper schedules. So thanks to staff for taking that up, and please get on it quickly to ensure that our people that use the system have the right information. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate those comments, and thank you, Steve, for the update to the body. And I think if you can also circle back as this work evolves there. And I think my only comment is that, I think there are, although more and more people are moving online, there are some people that still do rely on these things. And I think it's great that we're able to actually send out printed copies, but people also have to know how to request other than that. So make sure that information is getting out so that those that really do need to get those paper schedules do have access to that. So appreciate you joining us and providing us the update on that matter. Thank you, Steve. Okay, we're going to move to item number 3 on the agenda. This is a report from the chair. There were 2 items I just wanted to touch base with the Mayor's Council at the beginning of the meeting. First off, I just wanted to speak about the provincial election and congratulate Premier Horgan for the successful election, but also congratulate all of the parties involved and all of the candidates that put their names forward. We as the Mayor's Council obviously have a close working relationship with the provincial government and are looking forward to working with the new government. Over the last few years, I think we have done a good job as the Mayor's Council advocating and pushing for our local needs and interests when it comes to public transit and transportation in the region of Metro Vancouver. But I think we've also done a good job of fostering a good productive relationship with the provincial government and looking forward for that work to be able to continue. As the members around the table know, during this provincial election, we did put forward several asks to all of the provincial parties, and I do appreciate all of the parties taking the time to fill out our survey and provide responses back. It did show that there was a connection and interest from all of the parties in the work that we do and for transportation in Metro Vancouver. I think specifically in terms of the campaign platform from Premier Horgan and the NDP, I think included a lot of elements that we've been talking about. It included moving forward with the SkyTrain extension into Surrey and to Langley. It talked about making major significant investments into our transition to electric buses. There was a campaign commitment about having commuter rail go to the Fraser Valley and connecting the Fraser Valley to Metro Vancouver. There was also a commitment about making transit free for children under the age of 12. And I think most importantly and most time sensitive of us, there was a commitment to continue to work with both BC Transit and TransLink as we work through the financial challenges of COVID-19. So I think these were all important things that were committed in the campaign, and I think we need to immediately get to work to engaging the new provincial government in this very important work in this region, and even to pull up some of the issues that weren't raised in this provincial election, because I think certainly the platform didn't holistically cover all of the asks and interests that are coming from the Mayor's Council in the region. But congratulations to the Premier, and we as a body, the Mayor's Council, are looking forward to working with the new provincial government. Another big piece of news that came out a couple of weeks ago was the announcement from our CEO Kevin Desmond that he will be leaving TransLink in early 2021. And I wanted to say on behalf of the Mayor's Council, thank you for all the service that you have provided TransLink and the region. It's amazing how quickly 5 years can go by, but I really think TransLink as an organization and public transit has made some significant steps forward over those 5 years. The Mayor's Council's 10-year vision, when you first arrived, was really just a twinkle in our eyes, and now it is actively being implemented and engaged, and people are seeing the results with improvements in public transit in cities all across Metro Vancouver. So really on behalf of all of my colleagues, I want to thank you for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure to be able to work for you, and I think our region has been well served, and we will no doubt miss you when you go back home to the United States. So with that, that is the end of my report, but I will open it up to the body if there are any comments or questions. Mayor Vagermont.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo the comments that you made at the end there. A big thank you to Mr. Desmond, and it's been a pleasure working with you. And looking back at 5 years, certainly at least the public perception piece that was included in your email there, Kevin, to the Mayor's Council, I couldn't agree more that I feel the organization has definitely grown in that aspect, and for that we thank you. Good luck in the United States. All the best there. On that front, I wouldn't want to trade places with you. On the election side, Mr. Chair, I guess just a quick question. What is your vision for sort of sticking to some of those commitments that have been made and ensuring that those are followed through on? Is there any sort of plan for this body to follow?
Yeah, well, and maybe I can have Mike fill in some more details, but no doubt, as we've experienced in the past, we know translating campaign commitments to real policies does take some work, and I think the Mayor's Council is going to have to be very active to really advance that work there. Mike, do you have some comments in terms of some short-term strategies in which the Mayor's Council will be engaging the new provincial government?
For sure. Well, we'll do all the similar activities as we've done in the past. For example, we organized briefings with all new MLAs in Metro Vancouver, usually organized by party, to bring them up to speed on our issues, which is important. You know, even if an issue is a priority of a new government, you know, you want as many MLAs as possible who are informed and hopefully are eager to push that issue in the legislature. Obviously, we'll be connecting with the minister who responsible for TransLink, whoever that ends up being. We won't actually know until the writ is returned and the new government is sworn in, which doesn't sound like it'll be until at least the third week of November after the remaining ballots are counted. So we have some time. Obviously, there's conversations going on, right now with officials who will be preparing transition briefing binders for new ministers. So we're ensuring that provincial officials have got all the latest information, whatever we can provide them, on the promises that were made in their platform, because it'll be those platform commitments of provincial officials will need to be including in their briefing materials. And then, in terms of building that relationship with, again, the new minister, we'll have to wait to see who it is. It could well be continued Minister Robinson, which means sort of one track. Could be someone new. That'll mean another. There's actually an agenda item in the in-camera meeting where we can talk about some of the intergovernmental strategies we'll use on that. But I think the last thing I'll say is the commitments they made on transit are very significant and ambitious. Certainly what I've heard from officials in the NDP now is that, these are important commitments that they made, and that they may actually be pushing us to move quickly on these things. So I think we've got very much a willing partner on those items.
Well, let's hope so. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not seeing any further comments, so I'll just look for a motion to receive the verbal report.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're now on item 4.1 of the agenda. This is the mandate renewal and the implementation of the work plan. And as the Mayor's Council is aware, at our last meeting, we did adopt a refresh of our mandate, really focusing on, number one, our immediate needs of stabilization through the effects of COVID-19 on our transit system, and getting phase 2 of the Mayor's 10-year plan back on track and the implementation of that. And then also thinking ahead to the future of a refresh of the Mayor's 10-year plan, which we have slowly been able to work ourselves close to nearing the mid and end point of that there. So what we did task was staff to do some work about how we would implement that work plan and operationalize the more focused mandate that we have approved, and that's where this report is coming from. So I will now ask Jeff Cross just to do a short presentation to outline the contents in this report.
Thank you, Chair. So to the Mayor's Council, in the report, you will have seen the recommendation about endorsing a work plan that would match that renewed mandate. I'll just go through a couple slides to describe what the key components are and what's made up in those that then drive how we will propose to work with you and with the board and with the province in order to execute this. So per the direction at October 1st that was endorsed by the Mayor's Council for the remainder of your 2-year term, there were really these 3 components that the chair just mentioned, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about what they are. They are an investment plan to stabilize our funding. They're a completion of the long-range strategy for the 30-year sort of outlook, and then this renewal of what do we do in the next 10 years. That becomes the blueprint for what would follow afterwards. Investment plans are the basis by which we fund all the initiatives that are in the 10-year vision. So probably after you renew that 10-year vision, what we are showing here is that roughly in 2023, assuming that the region is in a good recovery state, we would look to start implementing that new renewed Mayor's vision. Mike, if we can go to the next slide, please. So as far as what's actually in the investment plan, we took the direction from you as far as what the priorities are for this next iteration, which we would need to complete by mid next year per the legislation. That needs to be done every 3 years at a minimum. It needs to be fully funded. So that means that we need to be able to stabilize what our revenues are over the 10 years and align those to what our expenditures are. So it needs to detail all of the different service levels, how we would pay for those, all of the major capital investments in that. The direction from the Mayor's Council was to stabilize the phase 2 investment plan that was approved in 2018, of which we had started to roll out some of that expansion, but had not completed it and deferred some with the onset of COVID back in the spring. So there are some remaining priorities, a couple of rapid bus lines, other bus services, other SkyTrain services to still go out as part of that. So we need to include that and find sufficient funding in order to do so. Per previous comments, we also need to come up with a plan for the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain, which based on the commitments of the provincial government would be moving towards them, but we need to sub out our current investment plan has the former LRT project, and whatever the arrangement is with the provincial government, that needs to be codified in that plan. And that is developed and approved by both the board and the Mayor's Council. The next piece is the long-range strategy that we have obviously been working very hard with you, that will give us the blueprint both from the policies perspective, what our objectives are, what our targets are, and then new networks for both the transit system, the active transport, including cycling and walking, some of our major road network investments, looking at roadway corridors, et cetera, and then the rapid transit projects as well that could come forward. It will also have major policy initiatives, and we would be looking to bucket those initiatives. It's a 30-year plan, but we would be looking through our work with you and with the province to bucket those into the first 15 years and the latter 15 years. This then aligns to the request by the Mayor's Council at the last month to come up with a renewed Mayor's vision. Before we even complete Transport 2050 with that bucketing in place, we would start to decide, working with you, what are those priorities for the first 10 years? The direction coming out of the last meeting was that the remaining projects from the previous Mayor's vision or the current Mayor's vision that have not been implemented and we're on the docket to go forward in an investment plan, a phase 3 investment plan, would be the starting point for that renewed vision. But then whatever comes out of Transport 2050 that you decide should go forward in that 10 years could make its way there. This is not a legislated plan. It was first surfaced in 2014 at the request of the provincial government, but it is an important blueprint for what comes after that we would then implement in phases most likely. It is costed, so there's a lot of work to be done on exactly what those initiatives would cost and when they would flow out. And we would recommend coming forward with a bit of a funding framework, something that the Joint Finance Committee could support us on in conversations with the provincial government. Next slide, please. So as it relates to timing, given the crisis that is COVID, there is a lot of work to be done in a very short term in order to deliver the investment plan on that schedule. And we have an item coming up, 4.3, a little bit more details about some of the risks associated with that. But in order to be able to deliver on the legislative mandate by June 28th of next year, basically we need to really start diving in with you, with the board, and also with the provincial government on what are the options for filling the funding gap that would persist after the relief funding that we have already been receiving or will be receiving from the provincial and federal government. It is very significant, putting aside the stabilization funding through 2021. We are looking at a regional gap that's on the order of $100 million to $300 million per year, depending upon how long the pandemic lasts, what the economic impacts are, and how quickly our ridership rebounds. So that's a lot of work that we will be doing with you, and we need to find new funding sources that could contribute to that. The disposition of the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain is an important element of that. If the provincial government takes that on, it does relieve our finances significantly. Per the question, I think, of Mayor Vagramoff about how we work with the provincial government, we do have an MOU in place that started back in the spring in order to deal with COVID, that also anticipated this ongoing work to come up with a rebalanced investment plan. So we will be commencing that as soon as the new government is in place. You see there in the circled boxes, we would be going out for public consultation on what would be in that plan and how we, more importantly, probably what sources we would use to pay for it in the spring of this year. The next timing from for the long-term vision, we're showing 2 consultation periods. One is in the spring, so around March, where we would be going out on some of the big strategy moves that we are considering with you, as well as the different networks options that we are considering, and then coming forward with a draft strategy in July and August that we would engage the public stakeholders on, go to municipal councils in order to see that what level of support we have for that, and if any changes are warranted, with the goal of having that approved by the end of next year. One of the things you had requested of us, and that is a byproduct of the delay of COVID, is to better align this with Metro 2050. And we have been meeting with senior staff at Metro Vancouver, and there are opportunities for us to go out and engage with our key stakeholders, and especially the municipalities, on how these 2 strategies will work together, which is certainly the intent, and it seems to be that's the path that we're on, which is very good. Then you see finally at the bottom where we would pick up the new renewal to the mayor's vision, starting to look at how we would prioritize those capital and operating projects that are identified in the long-term strategy. If there are new rapid transit network lines that should be studied in the first 10 or 15 years, we would identify which of those should happen in the first 5 or 10 years and get those ready potentially to go forward into a future investment plan. We would like to consult on this. We would suggest to the public, which is not something that we were able to do on the last mayor's vision before you adopted it. So it would be important to get out, talk to municipal councils, talk to the public late in 2021 and early into 2022. You see at the bottom some suggestions about how we may actually take this on. It is a very intense work program with a number of risks from a timing perspective. It's asking a lot of you to be able to get all of this done within the next 18 to 24 months. Our suggestions are that we would work with the committees as well as augment that with workshops of the full Mayor's Council and the board. So that is our recommendation, Chair. And if it's endorsed, we'll get into a more detailed work planning for each of the committee meetings in a future report.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We'll now open up to questions and comments from the Mayor's Council. Mayor Brody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our committee, the Joint Finance and Governance Committee, looked at this long and hard. And the one change we made was at the bottom, where you'll see in the report at the bottom of page 10. And I just want to highlight what that is and what it's about. We're getting towards the end of the second phase of the 10-year vision. We have to figure out how to complete that with some of the bus routes that have been deferred. Certainly Surrey-Langley SkyTrain is a major part of it. And then get into the third phase, which again, the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain, big part, but there's other components as well. What this does not mean as we go into it, whether you call it the third phase or the first phase of the next investment plan, what it does not mean is that we're going to be looking at all kinds of different priorities as to what we could insert in there and what we should be doing. The 10-year vision, the 10-year investment plan was a balanced plan brought into play in three phases. And the premise of it is it's fairness throughout the region and making sure that all parts of the region are improved in terms of their service. Sometimes there's a fixed rail lines, but it also goes to the buses and the roads, etc. So I just wanted to emphasize that if we left that sentence, if you see at the bottom of page 10, you leave that in there, and that's opening it up to all kinds of different priorities that staff may want to model and forecast, get municipal consultation and public and stakeholder engagement. What we're doing is we are going in to finish the second phase, and then we're going to do the third phase, whatever you call it. This is not open season to see what else should be inserted into that investment plan, and I think that has to be emphasized.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor Brody, and I know that was a topic of conversation at the Finance and Governance Committee, and I do think it is an important comment to make. Really, as we look at refreshing the mayor's 10-year vision, I think our thinking is that we are still committed to the existing mayor's 10-year plan, which has one large phase 3, not yet completed, and that is the starting point. Having said that, I think we've around this table have recognized as the region grows and changes over years, there are new priorities that are identified, and the main point of the refresh of the mayor's 10-year vision is to find the place in future phases beyond phase 3 of the existing mayor's 10-year plan, where those new priorities can fit in and enter our priority list. And I think that will be the real focus of the work that we're going to be engaging on this. So,
well, I agree with that. The focus has to be what goes into the future phases, but don't look to get into phase 3 just because staff or somebody or the public or something has this favorite project. We need to complete what is on the table and which has been delayed and form the basis for the regional consensus that was well established and well received without just throwing open all the priorities and throwing anything in there, which is the possibility if that sentence had remained in place.
Thank you. Mayor Buchanan.
Thank you very much. And thank you for staff for the presentation. And I'm curious in regards to, this first phase going for financial stabilization till June and having that in place. And if we're still forecasting a loss, I'm just curious from staff's perspective, even though we've been committed and we have an MOU, is there any other senior government stimulus funding that could be available that we could go after or that you're hearing about? Because we've got a big task ahead of us. And I'd rather see that we can go after more funding if it's available, although I'm very grateful for what we have received, so that we can actually be moving forward and completing the phase 3 and not looking at any cuts beyond 2021.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Buchanan. And maybe I'll refer that to staff because that definitely is a part of the thinking and discussions we're having.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, yeah. So absolutely. Obviously the provincial government or the new provincial government, given its election commitments, is pretty fully invested in doing everything it can. In fact, probably going beyond what we had hoped to help us achieve exactly that. Obviously, the federal government is still a bit of a question mark because they're preparing their budget for, we imagine, sometime next winter, spring, and I think that is an area where there is obviously a lot of opportunity. Of course, they're going to have to figure out what their own strategy is for COVID stimulus and recovery. Having said that, I think we have a powerful ally in working to urge the federal government to support us in that way, and that is going to be the new provincial government. If you look at their platform and their responses to our questions carefully, in almost every single instance where they're committing to investing in transit, they're specifying that they're going to seek federal partnership and support to do that. So I think we're going to have an important ally. Again, I think we're going to have a bit of an intergovernmental discussion in camera about our strategy going forward, and the federal, ensuring that we get the messaging right and the connections with the right people in Ottawa right is going to be a really important part of going forward. They're definitely going to be part of the picture, and they've told us they want to be part of helping transit recover. That's a very, very clear message we're receiving.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any further comments, so there is some recommendations coming from the Finance and Governance Committee. Maybe Mayor Brody, do you want to move those recommendations?
Yes, I'll move them.
Okay, is there a seconder?
Seconded.
Seconded. I will now call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 4.2 of the agenda, which is the application to the Greater Vancouver Regional Fund for our low carbon fleet strategy. And I'm going to pass it off to Jeff Cross to do a short presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Cote. This will just be a verbal per the report. And Jeff Busby is with me, our director on the low carbon fleet strategy. Just a couple of additional points I'd like to emphasize that are in the report. The purpose of it is, per our normal cadence, before we send our annual application to Metro Vancouver, who administers the Greater Vancouver Regional Fund, we always come forward to you and show you what it is that we intend to apply for. As you're aware, it's primarily through the renewal and upgrading of our fleet as they come up for replacement and for the expansion as well, with the goal of reducing greenhouse gas and other emissions. What this intends also to do is actually implement the first stages of the low carbon fleet strategy per what you see outlined in the report. So actually the acquisition of the first battery electric buses and the supporting infrastructure in order to enable those. We came forward to you, which might seem like an eternity ago, back in February, with what the path would be on actually implementing the low carbon fleet strategy, and got endorsement from you to stay on our aggressive path. This allows us to do so. There are some subtle shifts just because of timing and sequencing in order to be able to maintain that objective of purchasing of battery electric buses that can come in by 2023. The only other thing that I would like to emphasize is it came up during the election cycle. The NDP government did make a pledge around battery electric buses for transit. So one of the things we will look to do once they are ensconced is to see how quickly that program may come up We know it's very promising to help us actually deliver the full amount of that aggressive strategy, which you see was estimated at just under $450 million. Whether it impacts exactly what we go forward with for the Greater Vancouver Regional Fund, we would need to remain open to that. But we think it's encouraging for the next stages of this. So I'll leave it at that unless there's any questions from the committee chair for either me or Jeff about the application.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the update. I'll now open it up to the Mayor's Council. Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate my full support for the low carbon fleet strategy and the more aggressive targets. Mayor Hurley, back maybe earlier this year, maybe it was late last year, really got us moving in this direction more aggressively, or sort of sparked this discussion. And when I talked to MPs and candidates in the last election provincially, this is a real winner of an issue. I know federally that they very much want to support, and Jonathan Wilkinson, being the environment minister on the North Shore here, they're very, very supportive of moves to decarbonize the bus fleet. So I think this is a real winner. Of course, and this application to the region is fine, but I think that generally speaking, we should be pushing this. And I'm just concerned, and I hope it doesn't, because of other funding pressures, I hope we don't lose this initiative, because I think it's important for the region, and it's very, very likely to, I think, attract significant senior government funding. So I just want to take the opportunity to voice my support for it again.
No, I appreciate those comments. And, I think it was in February, just before COVID-19 hit, that, this body gave strong emphasis to move forward with the low carbon fleet strategy. And it's nice to see that we're now able to put our minds back to getting back on track and starting to implement that. I think the report kind of outlines a few changes in strategy to be able to move forward as quickly as possible, and use the gas tax fund top up from a few years ago to really kickstart and allow us to get started on that. So very much appreciate all the work to getting this program back on track. So I will look to the body if they would like to receive this report for information.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're now on to item 4.3, the 2021 investment plan. And Jeff Cross, you're up again.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a presentation for this, but we did want to dive into a little bit more detail, some of the components in actually developing the investment plan and some of the risks. Mayor Buchanan pointed to some of them in the previous discussion, and how we may handle those, given that we do not yet have a provincial government partner in place, and won't probably for another month, and given the critical timelines of getting between now and the end of June of next year. So we did highlight that the critical role that the investment plan will play in stabilizing our funding and making sure that we can deliver the services that we would all like to see going forward. There is a wide range, as I mentioned, anywhere between a $100 and a $300 million funding gap per year, starting in 2022, that would be impacted by a number of things, whether how long the pandemic lasts, how quickly ridership comes back, what the level of economic activity within the region is, which drives both fuel taxes because of the amount of travel that happens. It drives ridership. It actually impacts our development cost charges as well. So it has a very significant impact on that. Then on the expenditure side, those conversations with the provincial government about, as it relates to the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain, the question about if there are other capital elements of our investment plan that we could potentially funnel more funding in from the province or the federal government to provide relief. Those things all need to happen, but there's a very wide range still to be considered and to try and stabilize that. You see listed in the report what we are suggesting as the prioritization criteria on page 22, about if there are trade-offs that need to be made in the near term, in the course that we're not able to fully deliver the phase 2 investment plan and the deferred expansion with all of the revenue sources that you've yet to define. And if the demand is looking softer in the near term on our transit system, what are some of the things that we may do in order to prioritize where we put our investments? These came out of the priorities that were established by the board for the 2021 budget, and which we did engage you through the joint committees on at one point. We have also identified, given this level of uncertainty, both on the funding side and our ability to potentially find sufficient revenue sources and senior government support for that, as well as the risk that we may enter more acute phases of the pandemic between now and then. What do we do if things are very uncertain leading up to June? So you see three options that are listed there, whereby if we have not got concurrence around what the funding sources could be in order to fully fund this investment plan, do we delay it through to December of 2021, and there are risks associated with that? Do we request legislative relief by the provincial government who owns our act in order to actually have a later date? Or do we deliver a balanced plan that may show significant cuts if a new revenue source does not come in the latter years? Given the level of information that we have right now, what we feel is we need to continue to plan for the third option that you see there, which is to deliver some balanced plan by June 28th of next year. And that's the board preparing and approving it and making sure that it's in front of you, the Mayor's Council, for approval by that time, which, as I pointed to in the previous item, means that we actually need to be out consulting on this by April or at the latest early May with the public on how we would pay for it. So there are real risks as we see it, even if the provincial government is aligned with where we want to go. Given that the pandemic still may be quite intense at that point, what revenue sources may you and or them be able to turn on and commit to that we could count on in the investment plan? So our suggestion is, in this plan, you see a number of the risks identified, but given that and given the information that we have available, that we continue to plan even as a fallback option to hit that legislated deadline. And when a new provincial government is in place in November, we actually have discussions with them about potential legislative relief if that's forthcoming, that may give us a little bit of breathing room if events don't line up as we'd like to see. So I think I'll pause there. The recommendation is in the report, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I will now open up to the Mayor's Council if there's any questions or comments regarding the report and the recommendations. Okay, so I'm not seeing any hands up. No doubt this is going to be a significant part of our work plan and probably one of the more challenging things the Mayor's Council is going to have to work on. I guess my only question is I'm certainly supportive of the recommendation and in aiming for June, but the report does allude that there is a bit of flexibility if to give us a bit more time if needed, if the body needs. And I guess my own question is how would we be able to work in that flexibility if needed, Jeff?
Well, I think it's something that we would need to continue to explore with both you and the board. You see some of the risks associated with not hitting the deadlines, whether it be related to our commitments to our creditors, et cetera, that we'd have to work on. We would also, I think, start those conversations with the provincial government about what their assessment of the risk is, if there are other options. We've asked them to start thinking about that, if there are other options that may give us a little bit more breathing room. We have in the past come forward with plans that had contingencies, if you recall, whereby if we had identified a new funding source, either that the region controlled or the province did, that required legislation, whereby if that was not in place when you passed the plan, we showed what would happen if it didn't come forward. That's the approach that we're showing right now, so we could continue to do so and work with you on what that may look like. There are some options. If it wasn't adopted, we would have to look at what the fallback is. There's some issues as it relates to Surrey Langley. Obviously, we want to be able to advance on that and be able to substitute that out of our plan.
Okay, thank you. So there is a recommendation in the report. I will look to the body to move that recommendation.
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Okay, we are now going to move on to item 5.1 in the report, which is approving travel times for bus customers. And I'm going to ask Sarah Ross to join us to present this item.
Great, thank you so much. Oh, my notes have disappeared now that it went to full screen. Hang on, there we go. Okay, thank you. Joining me today is Dan Freeman. He's our Senior Manager of Bus Priority Programs. A year ago, we started shining a light on the extent of delay to bus customers we have in the region with the release of our monitoring report that quantified and mapped where people who take the bus are stuck in traffic, something that costs the region on the order of $75 million a year. And every year we are spending more money to keep our buses running on schedule, and our customers are taking longer to get from A to B. In July, we brought forward an assessment of dozens of bus priority opportunities that could be implemented quickly. And since then, per your direction at that meeting, we have been working with municipalities to implement these solutions. And I'm pleased to report we've made significant progress on many of the opportunities that were identified in July. This map shows the status of those projects, color-coded by timeline. 5 projects have been delivered already, and 9 more should be in place by the end of the year. Most of them are under construction right now. Another 5 projects are expected to be implemented in 2021. And there do remain a few projects that we don't have a completion timeline for. These projects expand upon the bus priority that was already in place on the top 20 corridors, which are shown in blue on this in this map. And we have also been working with municipalities on their initiatives to extend patios and sidewalk space, assessing whether there's an impact on transit, and if so, how it could be mitigated. And in places that are on the major road network, we have been expediting our review and approvals process. If you could go to the next slide. Here are some photos of recently implemented bus priority. A bus bulb on Robson Street means the bus doesn't have to pull in and out of traffic. There's more space on the sidewalk for pedestrians and more space for parking. A queue jump on Edmund Street in Burnaby. Look at that beautiful red paint, which is the standard road marking for transit. It provides a queue jump at the signal, and we like to say Burnaby is rolling out the red carpet for transit customers. But not just Burnaby, we have red paint in a number of locations, including city of Langley in Vancouver, and in this picture on Fraser Highway, where we also see a bus priority signal. It's a little bit hard to see in the photo, but if you look right at the top of that traffic signal, there's a white line, and that's the signal that means that buses get to go first before the light turns green for everyone else. Not shown here, we don't have a picture shown here of our bus stop balancing project, which we've been doing on our number 2 line, where we have removed some bus stops that were too close together. We're still in the pilot phase of this and are reviewing the public feedback, but we do think that we found the right balance of ensuring that people don't have to walk too far to access a bus stop, and that the stops aren't so close together that the bus is stopping every 200 meters. We anticipate undertaking a bus stop balancing project on 2 more bus routes in Q1 of next year, and are looking forward to continuing working through corridors for where we have bus stops that are too close together. And then just to the next slide, our last slide, there are, of course, many more opportunities for bus priority that could be implemented in 2021. With support from this body, TransLink has a policy mandate for bus priority. We have staff expertise, we have funding available. Of course, what we don't have is the decision authority for approving these bus priority measures. To improve travel times for people who take the bus requires municipal support, both at the staff level to collaborate with us to develop the projects, and at the decision maker level. And as I said, we are making progress, and we're really pleased with the measures that have been implemented and those that are imminent. And we would also say there remains much opportunity to reduce delay to people who are on the bus with quick win solutions that don't require big trade-offs, that don't negatively impact vehicle traffic or parking. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with municipalities who want to advance bus improvements for their constituents who take the bus. So Dan and I are happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have a few hands up. Mayor West.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. I really like this stuff. This to me is kind of our bread and butter, and it's such low-hanging fruit and can have such a huge impact as Roz just sort of laid out. So I'm very keen to see this work continue to be prioritized, and for us to be aggressive in making these changes wherever we're able to. Sarah, you mentioned that there are projects that we, several times you mentioned there's projects that we don't have timelines for, or there's many other opportunities that we could pursue. Is the only holdup in pursuing that going through the municipal process of working with your partners and getting the green light? Is that where the challenge, or not the delay, but is that sort of what would hold us back from being able to say to you today, Sarah, go get it done. Let's do them all.
Yes, well, we absolutely have the enthusiasm, and we have funding where we can do things. We recognize that municipalities do have to balance a whole bunch of priorities. In some ways, it's easy for me. I'm a singularly focused on. Actually, I'll back that up, because that's not true. I'm very much focused on bus priority. We also at TransLink need these roads to function for all of our users. But we do feel that sometimes it's new for municipal staff and for municipalities, and we do think there are places, for example, sometimes we have what are called pullouts, where the bus has to pull out of traffic, and that can really slow the bus down. And it's a very simple thing where you just take that pullout out and the bus can keep going. Scott Road is an example of where we have a mix. Some of the stops are in the lane and some of them are bus pullouts. Removing those bus pullouts can help just improve a bit of travel time without having too much negative impact on the rest of the corridor. So yes, we absolutely need municipalities to be really, and the more municipalities can be proactive, we're here to support, and we can move those ahead quickly.
Okay, that's great, and certainly experience in our community has been really positive with it. Look, I think in the absence of big dollars to pursue some of the mega projects that we all probably have our wish list about. This type of work I think is really important, and so the more of this type of optimization we can do, the better. So thank you for it. I hope we can do more as quickly as possible.
Thank you for those comments, and I do think this is important work. It's the beauty of this work too is for every dollar we invest, we get dollars back in more efficiencies in operating our system too. So it's a smart place to be investing our limited resources at this point for sure. Mayor Hurley.
Thank you, and I too agree that this is kind of our bread and butter, and where we should be spending probably a lot more time. Thank you for showing the photos on Edmund Street on the 106 route. That to me has been a huge success, even the limited time that it's been present. But I did have a question around the bus stops, because I read in the media that some bus stops have been taken out along the 106. Has that happened? And I am concerned that maybe people are having to walk too far between bus stops. I realize it's a balance, but I just had a question around that. But thank you for the work that's been done on this. And I do believe we need to do a lot more of this.
I'll ask Dan to speak specifically to the 106. It is absolutely a balance. We want to, and that's what we look at, particularly thinking about people with disabilities, people who are seniors, who have more difficulty walking, really taking a lens to making sure that we find that right, we hit that balance correctly. Dan, do you have anything specific you can speak to on the 106?
Yes, Mayor Hurley, your question. First of all, again, thank you. We're very excited about the priority measures on Edmonds. There haven't been any bus stop balancing projects on the 106 corridor. I can't speak to the specifics. There may have been some instances we know kind of throughout the region that there are thousands of bus stops, and occasionally some of them are changed or moved through construction or other projects. So we can look into that specifically, but we haven't done any wholesale review of stop spacing on the 106 or proposed any changes at this time. We have done so, as Sarah mentioned, on route number 2 as part of a pilot, and we've been our preliminary results is that it is very promising and something that we're looking to pursue on other corridors. If and as we do that, we will certainly do, like as we did on the number 2, extensive public outreach and seek feedback to make sure that we are getting the right balance, because we recognize that that the stop spacing is a delicate balance, that we need to make sure that the stops are there in the locations that they need, that they provide the necessary access to our customers to get to the service, while ensuring that the service is still attractive enough and is reliable.
Well, thank you for that. And it was reported in our media that there were some of those stops coming out, but I hadn't heard it mentioned here. So that's why I asked the question. But again, thank you so much for that work. And I agree with Mayor West that this is work we should be accelerating. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Vandenbroek.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really important too that we do more of this. And I just want to take this time to thank Sarah and her staff, who did a fantastic job working with our city staff to implement this in the city of Langley. There's been huge benefits to it. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Harvey.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Sarah, very much appreciate you attending by Zoom with your good staff discussions with our city council last Monday with regards to rapid bus on Scott Road. We're disappointed in Delta that we had that project delayed, and I understand why with the COVID situation. But when you look at Scott Road, which hasn't had any improvements, can some of this money be directed towards Scott Road at the same time we're trying to put in the rapid bus? And can those two projects work together to make an overall better project? And I hope Mayor McCallum will support me on this, because the Scott Road corridor, both servicing North Delta and Surrey, is one of your busier corridors. If you could explain the ridership that exists there now.
Yes, absolutely, Mayor Harvey. You're bang on. In fact, the Scott Road corridor, the 319, 2019, it was our 7th busiest bus route in the region. During COVID, as I've said before to this body, transit bus ridership has remained most robust in that area of the region. And now the 319 is about the 3rd busiest bus route in the whole region. So it's an incredibly busy bus route. And we absolutely, these can move, this work that we're doing on the rapid response. So we are doing the work on the rapid bus and doing a comprehensive corridor plan, working with, in partnership with Delta and Surrey. That doesn't preclude us from moving quickly on implementing some quick win opportunities, which have been previously identified, but we don't have an implementation timeline from Surrey on that yet. We're currently looking at those as part of that broader corridor, but we do have funding available, and we could move sooner on those to start making improvements right away for that incredibly busy corridor, which does have also it's also one of the top 20 corridors for delay in the region.
Sorry, Sarah, you did mention Surrey. Have you not been to Delta requesting our comments with regards to improvements on our side of the road?
Dan, do you want to speak to whether we had identified anything that could be done quickly on the Delta side?
Yeah, I think we have started. We had some staff level conversations with Delta and Surrey staff about opportunities for temporarily filling in some of the pullouts as well as some opportunities for kind of temporary bus only lanes in some locations that could be trialed as they have been elsewhere in the region. We've been seeing some success. We've seen examples in many of these member municipalities of being able to move really, really fast and try some things out with low cost materials that could be reversed or adjusted as things change. Our understanding is that, as this road is a co-managed road, that there needs to be support from staff and council on both sides for those changes. And so far, we haven't had a timeline identified for how we could move quickly on that. So I think, this has been the case. I think there's a lot of opportunities we've been identifying as on our team where we see issues and opportunities across the region and providing those to staff. Sometimes we've been successful moving really quickly on some of them, and others less so.
I would ask if, Sarah, since you mentioned how busy this corridor is and the importance to the ridership that we're having, could we offline just discuss how Mayor McKellen and I could actually meet with TransLink staff and try to move this forward so that we're not sitting with this busy corridor just not receiving any attention at all? I'd appreciate that. So I'm offering my help, and I'm sure Mayor McKellen will join me in saying, hey, we'd like to get some improvements and not just wait 3 years for rapid bus.
Yes, we absolutely can do that.
I really appreciate that. Thanks for all your good work.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cameron.
This is sort of not directly related to the rapid, the corridors, but it made me, Ms. Ross's comments made me wonder to what extent staff are adjusting routes right now in light of COVID, because it seems that some routes are running quite empty or emptier, and some routes like the 319, I believe she said, are at capacity. To what extent are we feeding an area that seems to really still want a lot of transit and making sure that it's better and we get even more people along that route? And to what extent are we keeping buses going on routes that were previously a lot busier and we're hoping to rebuild that ridership? Like, how are staff dealing with that dynamic? Do you keep these emptier routes going, hoping to build up over time over the next year? Or do we feed the areas that are at capacity now and hope to grow them?
Thank you for that question. Yes, I can speak to what we're doing on the bus service. So we are monitoring the service. What we have been doing, we did some in September, we'll have more coming in changes in January, is some reallocation. So we're delivering all of our almost all of our full service, all of our full service on bus, and are doing reallocation. So we're taking some places service, and the reallocations we're doing are all done with the objective of maintaining the integrity of the network and maintaining the usability of the network and keeping the network and the service convenient for customers. There are places that pre-COVID, we had very, very high frequency service. That frequency was being provided in order to deliver enough capacity to meet the ridership demand on that corridor. So by very, very high frequency, I'm talking routes where they're running, every 5 minutes. What we have done is we have pulled back some of that service a little bit, not dramatically, but maybe something's gone now. For it used to run every 5 minutes. We're going to dial it back to maybe every 7 minutes, every 8 minutes, so that we can take that resource, that bus, and then we've been moving it to those parts of the network that need extra service to meet the demand on that corridor and to make sure that there's space on the vehicles. So we are doing reallocations. It's really with taking service from very high frequency places and adding it to places that need more service. So we have not been doing anything that would undermine the usability of the service, where particularly on routes where the service might run every half an hour, the ridership is, albeit very low, we're still keeping that on every half an hour, because if we reduce that, we don't provide it every half hour in some places to meet demand. We do that to make sure there's a usable and convenient and network that people can rely on.
Okay, thank you. So I think there is broad support for this work and us to continue to work through this. So I appreciate your update, Sarah, and I will now look to the council to move receipt of this report.
So moved. Again.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're now on to item 6.1 in the report, which is the voting procedures. It looks like we are going to continue in this electronic format for some time into the future there, and that is going to necessitate a few changes. So maybe Mike, if you could just speak briefly to this report and the recommendations in it.
For sure. Well, I think the details are in the report, and certainly happy to answer any questions. But we took a look at a number of ways of facilitating secret ballot voting. I want to say we, Carol Lee, our amazing recording secretary, and I, and it's actually Carol who is really the expert in this. And she concluded, based on her experience and looking around at what other similar agencies are doing, that in fact the polling tools right in Zoom, the application we already use, give us the ability to limit who's going to be able to vote. It provides anonymous voting. So in other words, when you use these tools, you won't be able to see what other people or how other people are voting. It allows us to record a record, so that way scrutineers can take a look if that's required. It's anonymous, so we think it meets all those measures, and most importantly, it's super easy. So in fact, and we'll be doing some testing between now and December 3rd, but we can set up the polling tools at the bottom so that you can simply click the little yes or no button to record your vote. And then Carol Lee would receive those votes, tabulate the results, and then provide the results. So happy to answer any questions. Certainly, Carol, if I missed anything, you can add something as well.
No, I think you got it all, Mike.
Okay, I'll open up if there are any questions from the council. Not seeing any. If I can get there is a recommendation in the report, so if I can.
So moved.
Council.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, that brings us to the end of our public meeting. Our next public meeting is December 3rd. And it will once again be a virtual format there. I will ask members if they can, we'll probably take a short 5-minute break before we move into our in-camera meeting, but maybe mute your microphones and take a bit of a stretch break. And once the YouTube video has been turned off, we will resume in about 5 minutes time with the in-camera meeting. So thanks everyone.